with things. Oh, Tom.
There we go.
I love it when you fuss with things. Hey, I am the Manful Handful. I don't know when you guys got tuned in, but I know this. I'm all about you. And let me just say this. That's enough about me. What about you? And that little phrase happens to be a song that I'm going to be playing today that was from a very cool product I put out in the late 90s or middle 90s. I think it was called There Was a Time. And it's a record I never promoted because I wasn't that proud of it, because at the time I was struggling with some dollars and with support. I didn't have my team and it was tough getting work. But the record is filled with great songs. And the product that I did put out, There Was a Time, should have been a demo. And I should have waited till I got my team together and got some money and things better organized. That was a time we didn't have no plumbing here. We were pissing in buckets. But I'm okay now. But anyway, I'm going to play That's Enough About Me, What About You? And I'm going to send it out to my friend Jimmy Sinclair, who lost his dad in the past few months, who was a gentleman I got to meet. Daddy Sinclair. Got to meet his sons and his beautiful daughters. And there were a couple of those, I remember. Jimmy had some good-looking sisters. Oh, how you doing? And I'd also like to say hello to my friend Johnny Mars, who's been struggling for the past few years. And from a really cool band called The Knobs. Johnny, kisses from a Dago to a Dago. Johnny Mars, he fit the profile of an Italian. He worked in concrete. And Tom's laughing. Tom, it ain't funny. It's racial profiling. Yeah, it is funny. All that shit's funny. I guess we ain't supposed to laugh at it anymore now because we're civilized. I'm not as civilized as I should be. Believe it. I'm trying to be more civilized. I'm working at it. But hey, guys, thanks for tuning in today. We really need you. We need your support. And I'm not talking about money. We need your support. What we need your ear. We need your eyes. We need to know that what we're doing and who we are has significance. And that it can help. That somebody wants to feel us. And looks to us to be entertained. And what a privilege it is to entertain. You know, I was telling Tom earlier, show business. You know, I was talking about show business. When show business was show business. When they had them, when Dean Martin, oh, that's the second time I'm going to fall today. I'll tell you about that later. When they had them girls, the June Taylor dancers, and they'd all kick together like Las Vegas showgirls. And they'd have a big line of them. And they all had long legs. You know what I'm saying? And when they would all kick together, every guy in the room, every kick they made, he'd feel a little. And that's something. If there's a God, He planned it. And how fantastic was that? Showgirls, entertainment, Dean Martin, Jackie Gleason, Red Buttons. These guys, Milton Berle. These guys were into smiling and laughing and clever tickling of the mind nerves. They would get in there and tickle your mind's nerves, and you would go, or you would go. Enter-effin-tainment. I'm all about it. You know, when I was a teenage boy and in my early 20s, I watched the change from Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. Frank was another great entertainer. When he wasn't singing and when he spoke, there was something about it that you listened to because he knew how to engage which is, I think, is something being lost on the kids today that are brought up on computers. They don't engage. Like when I was a kid, I knew how to trick people into liking me with my bullshit. My bullshit got me through. It was, can I use the word out effing standing? I thought, and I only built upon it. And for a while, I was made to feel, even in my family, you know, they kind of tamped me down and tried to make me feel like the way I was naturally approached people and being around others, that it wasn't right for me to be so hambonish, to be so demanding of other people's attention, to say things, to say stupid shit just to see the smoke on other people's faces. All that was natural for me. It was natural for my Uncle Larry. It was natural for my cousin Larry. It was natural for my father, Arthur. And it was natural for me. And here I am today, whipping it upon y'all. I told Tom when I come in, we park out in front of the studio here, and the people across the street, they always park and don't leave me no place to put my truck. And I was so aggravated at the way they parked that I was like, you know what I was doing? I was pouting like a little baby. And as I'm pouting and coming into the studio, I didn't see the curb, and I hit the curb, and I fell on my ass, spilled my coffee, and I looked. The first thing I did was make sure I was okay. Then I looked around to see if I needed to be embarrassed. Any of my people saw me on my shit can in the street, and the only reason it happened, because I let myself get pissed off. I'm trying to learn how not to do things like that. At my age, what the hell's the difference, right? They want to park there. Deal with it, double N. Deal with it. Tom's here. He came down from Erie. We were talking about Italians, and Tom was talking about a club up in Erie where all the Italians would go. And not just certain Italians, but Italians from Calabria. And then a certain village in Calabria. What was the name of the village, Tom?
Roccapia.
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 How great is that? Rocca, well, that's Italian for rock and roll. And Pia is Italian for piscia dill. No, I'm making that up. Like, what did I say before? I always would like to say stupid shit to see the look on other people's faces. And I've done it so long that in doing the Alone show, I've realized this Alone show has made me realize I don't need to see your faces. I just need to say that shit. And so I got real problems. And but I can imagine the look on your face when I say Roccapia. Well, Tom said it first. And he's not even Italian. We're going to play some songs today. I admit to you, I didn't study my rotten keyboard playing too much this week. I did a little, but I had all these other things going on, and I had some things going on that were kind of incredible. I had my little friend, my little hillbilly friend from Wild Wonderful, who now currently resides in Nash, Tennessee. And we got a chance to get in the studio together. And can I say, oh my aching ass. What we spent our time on. We spent our time listening to and checking out a Diamond Rio record from 1978 live at the Red Eye in Salina, Ohio, with my friends Dennis Baker and Ron Fry. Very good buddies to this day that used to book us out there to these amazing shows for all these Flatlanders, dope smoking, beer drinking Flatlanders. My people! And there's an 11-song album with the Diamonds playing at their most. You know, when you think of great music, there's one word that can describe certain great music. Like if you ever heard the album by Pharoah Sanders called The Creator Has a Master Plan. If you ever heard Gato Barberi's albums for ESP Records, that just had a bass player and a drummer. When you hear some of Jimi Hendrix stuff, when you hear a lot of Stevie Ray stuff, and even sometimes when you hear The Clash, a band like that, you would hear desperation. And when there's desperation in the music, you got my attention. Something about desperation is so human, and it can transfer from one body to another body. And I think this Diamonds record has it, a bushel full of it. And we also worked on a mess of cuts that I have found from the Diamonds that we never finished, that I had been working on for probably a year and a half. Right after Rough Cuts, I just kept recording the whole time, because that's what I do. And a lot of these guys, they have to write songs for an album, and they're waiting for 2 years before they start writing. I'm not that guy, because I just write all the time. Even then, when I wasn't even really a writer, I wrote shit, but I wasn't a writer. And but I was working with a guy that had very, very nice writing skills, name of Frank Sori. But anyway, we were working on this Diamond Rio stuff that is just super delicious. A song called Shakedown, a song called Dangerous Stranger. How about you're looking for a great name for an album? Dangerous Stranger. You don't even need to put a picture of anybody on the front of it. You just put Dangerous Stranger, and that is a picture. Am I getting a little too deep for you? Stop me if I'm getting too deep. Man, we're glad to be here. Got my sippy cup, My Starlight fans, they make fun of me. Says, Norman, look, he got a little sippy cup. He got that cup when he was 3 years old, a little boy. Kept it all these years just to wet his parched lips. Who just spend all this time yakking senseless bullshit. But anyway, the Diamond stuff was super delicious to dig into. And I always knew that what we were doing was extremely high level and extremely credible. But I got very little support anywhere for those thoughts. At the time, who we were and how we were scared other people. And I ain't saying that we shouldn't have scared other people, because I'm pretty sure we all scared ourselves. But the music we were doing is so deep and so... It's like it's only... Muscle and bone is what all the music is. In fact, there's a song on it called Skin and Bone that's just, it's a little bit of riff rock. But riff rock at its highest level, I would compare what we were doing to a band like, not these candy assers, a band like Free, a band like Humble Pie at their best, like the Stones. Bands that all these years later, when you hear them, you go like, boy, those guys were feeling something deep. When you hear the Sticky Fingers record, it's not a perfect record. Christ, the damn thing ain't even hardly in tune the whole way. But when you hear the music and the feel of what they were doing, you realize those guys were deeper into it than 90% of the candy assers. And there's different degrees of candy assers. I'll step back, because I was getting excited. I like using the word candy assers, because there's a lot of guys that make music part-time, and they like to dibble and they like to dabble, and they want to play a song they wrote for their little girlfriend. Yeah, that's great. But you know what? Don't get your panties all in a bunch about what you're doing, because when you look back 40 years later, like I just look back at what I was doing 42 years ago, and you know what? I'm proud as a rotten buck about it. And when you look back at the other cats that were putting us down and burying us alive and talking shit on us, when you look back at what they were doing at the same time, I don't have to say another goddamn word. What I'm just going to do? I'm going to stand in the corner and go like this here. I couldn't have won a battle with you guys fighting about who is and what is and what is and who's doing what. So I didn't. I just did the goddamn work. And now, I still have nothing to say except... Tom, I just spit all over everything and myself. Hey, let's get a song going, and we'll do our alone theme song. It's a little piece of music called It Ain't a Party Till You, and I mean you, till you get here. I sit at the keys, give him a little tap. How about a little sippy cup? You know, my friends call me Nipples the Clown. And I think there should be a clown club. Nipples, Sprinkles, Knuckles, Pebbles, Chuckles. All these clowns, and we should get a band together. Joints jumping, pimps and hoes, something missing till you show. It ain't a party till you get here. When you arrive, everybody get turned up. The joint come alive. You make my blue disappear. It ain't a party till you get here. Lights are low, bands playing, dressed to kill, people swaying. It ain't a party till you get here. When you arrive, everybody get turned up. The joint come alive. You make my blue disappear. It ain't a party till you get here. Come on, baby. Come on. Spilling out into the parking lot. Inside the joint, it's too damn hot. And ain't a party till you get here. When you arrive, everybody get turned up. The joint come alive. You make my blue disappear. That ain't a party till you get here. Hope I made myself perfectly clear. That ain't a party till you get here. It ain't a party till you get here. You got your popcorn. You know what? I think you guys should make yourself turn on the oven. Turn on the oven. And make yourself a chicken pot pie. Chicken pot pie. I think I'm going to start doing commercials. Thanksgiving, Christmas coming. You know, Swanson's and any of these people make frozen food and they make chicken pot pies. Call me and I will be your spokesperson. Does anybody remember Arnold Stang? I believe what his name was. And he used to do Chunky commercials. Remember Chunky the candy bar, Tom? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
And
I know the.
Do you know the name?
Bar, but yeah.
Do you know the name Arnold Stang?
No.
I think that was his name, but I'm not sure. And he would go like this. See if you remember a guy saying this. He'd go like, Chunky, what a chunk of chocolate. Do you remember that? Not at all? Well, I remember from being a little kid. What a chunk of chocolate. And it was a cat named, I believe, Arnold Stang. He was kind of like Gilbert Godfrey before Gilbert Godfrey was Gilbert Godfrey. And there's people that actually like that guy. What are you going to do? People think he's cool. But man, I got to tell you, Bryce Foster and I were sniffing up the skirt of Shakedown, Dangerous Stranger, high effing rollers, dude. It's kind of like a riff rock number. Boom, 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 boom. And it's just so stomped out. Boom, boom, boom. Strong, manful, and it features the late, great Warren King, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to play Kingfish later today just because we're talking about this work and we were doing this work. Hey, I'm wearing my Glenn Pavone and the Cyclones t-shirt. Two great Pittsburgh guitar players that I studied under and from a distance because I was just a fan and still am a fan of greatness. And you can find greatness in different places. It isn't always promoted because you know what I've learned about society? Greatness scares MFers. It scares people. And so sometimes when something's great, a lot of people want to deny it, want to shun it because they don't want to believe that that it's real. You know, Glenn Pavone was real. When he played the guitar, you could not look away. You could not deny what was going on. You know what you did? No matter who you were. Chicks. You know, we all think, yeah, blues rock. There's a bunch of old dudes sitting, it's all guys sitting in there wishing they were this other guy playing the guitar. Well, when Glenn played guitar, chicks moved closer. Because they could feel the passion and the pain inside them. And they felt it as women. It was universal. It wasn't a guy thing. It was a people thing. His greatness transcended that. And greatness can do that. Warren King was similar in a different way. Glenn was more of a traditionally good musician. Blues, rhythm and blues. You could say derivative of Stevie Ray Vaughan, but I wouldn't say that. I would say as good as Stevie Ray Vaughan and similar. But I don't think he was a child of that. I think he was a child of all the way back to Eric Clapton. Remember him? And his J.J. Kill fetishes and his back to that John Mayall record they did. You know, we all studied that shit. Every goddamn song on it. And, Warren was different than Glenn, and that Glenn had these. Warren was very much into the blues music, but he was not a traditional blues guitar player like Glenn was. Glenn studied them all, mimicked, kind of like Stevie Ray Vaughan did in his own way. Glenn became Glenn. Warren was a little different. Warren, when it came to blues guitar players, the only guitar player he really studied a lot was Duane. And so that was always present in Warren's slide playing because he played slide and guitar. And there's some stuff on this new Diamond stuff where Warren plays slide. In fact, we do a song called Gone Dead Train. I think it was written by Ted Templeton and Jack Nitschke for a movie called Performance that Mick Jagstone starred in. You remember that movie, Tom?
Yep.
Who's the female interest in that? Do you remember? It might have been Anita Pallenberg.
I think it was.
It might have been even when she was still young and had a bit of innocence to her.
I think it was.
But we do a version of that song that is, and that version was sung by Randy Newman, man. And I don't know if you guys are gay for Randy Newman like I am. I think Randy Newman was so hip. I don't know if you ever heard the album 12 Songs by Randy Newman. Classic American recording. Didn't get much play, but people started copying arrangements and songs from it, and so it had wings, but not to masses. But anyway, talking about Warren. Warren was a one of a kind because his natural strength was rock and roll, but he had this powerful blues presence that was stronger than other blues players had. He kind of like played through the blues with strength and energy, and not in a happy-assed way where you know, a lot of guys, you know, they step on their pedals and they play real fast licks and arpeggios. Warren wasn't that. Warren had this intensity, this heat, this effing pain that was, it was there all when he played. Let's play a song and send it out to Warren King. The Memory. I think Warren passed in February. And I remember when he went, it was like the coldest days of the year. And for some reason there was some significance to that to a lot of people.
What year?
I'm not sure what year it was. Probably 7 years ago. It was 10 years this August that Glenn passed. And Warren lived a couple years, I think, beyond Glenn. So I'd say 7 or 8. And at the time, we were doing a record together, Warren and I. I was doing a record for a band called J.J. Burner, which Mike Flo was the drummer for. Big House Mike. One of my greatest, most famous, my favorite people in the world. But anyway, Warren played guitar on the album and just played so great. And when we did the record, it was like back in the old days. When we used to cut, Warren would get his sound, and he'd stand there, and he'd, what do you want me to do? He'd say, tell me what to do. And I would just start telling him what I heard in my head. And he would just start throwing. And that's the same thing we used on the last record he played on. All them years later with J.J. Burner. Really kind of cool for me to be a part of. Okay, let me get it started. Young buck asked about him, said, did he stand that tall? Did he drop his pants in Texas as he raised up his Les Paul? Tell me the story. How he blazed the trail. Yeah, the man they called it Kingfish sure knew how to wail. Kingfish down in Memphis, drunk up all his dough. Got Elvis's phone number from a couple hoes. All them strippers tell you he gets a wind in his sail. Yeah, the man they called it Kingfish shake the feathers of his tail. Hey, folks still talk about that night on Woodstock Ave. Threw his Les Paul out the window, landing on a Cadillac. Played a killer show that night, I still remember that. Yeah, the man that called it Kingfish took it all out on his stride. Kingfish in New York City, on the road to ruin. Down in the village doing shit you shouldn't be doing. Strap on a 6-string like it didn't have a care. Took a bite of the Big Apple, middle finger in the air. Hail to the Kingfish, hail to the man, pissed into the wind, just because you can. Hail to the Kingfish and his rebel soul, dancing with the devil, playing rock and roll. Some say he'd play like Billy Gibbons, man, he'd bring to mind Dwayne. How about Johnny Winter, high up on whiskey and cocaine, y'all? Talking about the legends of the Bandit String. Yeah, the man they called it Kingfish make that guitar sing. Now there's been some guitar slingers, they all pay their dues, but ain't a one of them better playing him rock and blues, and that's a fact of the matter. That ain't no fairy tale. Yeah, the man they called it Kingfish sure knew how to wail. shake the feathers of his tail. How you doing? The Kingfish. Warren Kingfish King. How beautiful was he? I've been working on his stuff I'm going to be working on for the next few months. We got two new Diamonds records coming out. Two. A live album, which will be called Live Red Eye, because they used to call these shows Red Eye shows. Really great little place in the middle of nowhere, not far from the state of Indiana state line, Salina, Ohio. Actually, where Rick Derringer was born. But we got that, and we got a studio album that is killer. And the studio album has 4 cover songs that we cut. And the 4 cover songs we cut are Johnny Too Bad, which the Silencers did a version of on their album. But all I can say is, wait till you hear what we did with the Diamonds. We also did a slow version of Burnin' Love, because we always thought love making should be slow and kind of like a grind. You understand what I'm saying? Lord Almighty, I could feel my temperature rise. Frank Zorri singing the living crap out of it. The Bead Man playing it so laid back, but with some bang in the booty. There is an incredible reggae version of the Sam Cooke song Shake. Yeah, how's it go? Listen while I'm talking to you. I tell you what I'm gonna do. There's a new dance that's going around. Frank Zorri singing the living crap out of a reggae version of Sam Cooke's Shake. All I can say about that is, damn. And the other song is the Gone Dead Train, Ted Templeton, Jack Nitschke number, written for and performed for the movie Performance. So those 4 covers, and each one of them is simply delicious, and each one of them has its totally unique arrangement. Which when we didn't like doing cover songs, but when we did, we didn't like try to sound like the record. We try to take that song and suck the life out of it and have it come out of our lips, and with our culture and our past influence that piece of material so it sounded like we wrote it. And that, when you're doing that on a cover song, you're getting something out of it. But when you're trying to imitate a Bon Jovi song, with your Bon Jovi tribute band or whatever, I mean, I guess it's cool, but it doesn't lead you down the path to individualism. It doesn't take you to find what's in your shorts. Honey, what's in your panties? Do you know what I mean? And for me, it was always about finding out what was in my panties. And there wasn't anything in there when I started. But when you work, when you look, when you search, and when you live life, when you get off of your ass and go do wrong shit just because you need something to do, when you go in the truck and play a gig that you know you're going to get bombed out at, but you're going to do it anyway, and you're going to fight for what's right, and you're going to try and make something of yourself in front of that audience. You know, a lot of bands, if they go to a gig and people don't clap, they go, boy, that's a bad audience. I never said that. You know what I said? What do I need to do to trick these sons of bitches into focusing on me? Who do I have to become? And you don't become that during the gig, but when you do that gig, the light goes on. And you know what happens? A path appears. And you walk down that path. And you learn a little bit. And then you go do something else. And a path appears. You know, when you're always doing and you're always trying and always searching and seeking, you might find something. In your panties, you might find a man in there. Like this. You guys know who my favorite wrestler is. I mean, I got a lot of favorite wrestlers. I'll mention a couple. George the Animal Steele. You kidding me? How great. How about Argentine Rocco? Back to the 1950s. How about Johnny Valentine? For Pittsburghers. Johnny effing Valentine. Don in the tights. Coming out in the tights. Fighting. Izzy Moydell, the referee. Ringside Rosie. Remember Ringside? Come on, man. She was Pittsburgh. She was us. She was all of our grandmothers. And some of our mothers. Loved her. I'm so glad to be here today. If I'm talking and not making a lot of sense, it's only because I need this shit. I need to be out. I need to be doing this 3 to 4 nights a week. So when things are spaced out and I get a chance, circumstance puts me on my own. I start thinking too many thoughts, being too crazy, and I'm going to try to focus a little better as we move forward. Let me blow you a kiss. Have I blown Ron Moondog Esser a kiss today? I haven't. Mooney, if you're watching, if your people are watching, you know I love you. You know how much I miss you. You prick. I think about that time you come out of... At the time we were in Erie. I ever told that story? I probably told it. But we were playing in Erie, and there was a bunch of bands on the show, and everybody showed up at our trailer in the morning. It was an afternoon show, and there must have been 8 or 10 bands. And everybody showed up at my trailer to smoke the first joint of the day. Probably about 10 o'clock in the morning. So we're all just tuning up, waking up, trying to be somebody. Moondog's in the shower. It's probably about 20 guys sitting in the kitchen area of the... Sitting, standing. Moondog comes out of the bathroom, stone cold naked, walks in the room, swinging a towel around. Then he takes the towel and flosses between his legs, smiling. Johnson flopping in the air. And he had this look on his face of a devilish, proud man. And I looked and I just thought, you know why I love that son of a bitch? He got problems. He is effed up. And the people here that don't know him like I know him, they're going to probably think bad thoughts about him. And that's what he was promoting. He wanted everyone there to know that he wasn't like all the other guys. And I think that's a great way to be, because I got a little bit of that inside of me. Wanting everybody to know, hey, I'm not like the other guys. I'm not a nice guy. You know, when I listen to this diamond shit that we're working on, it just tells me. Sometimes I wonder, and I get to the edge of feeling guilty about how I've kept myself on the outside of the Pittsburgh rock scene. And I've always kind of bitched about and not shouted out favorable acclaim for the other so-called Pittsburgh rock and roll people. And sometimes I feel like I wish I wasn't that guy. But when I listen to what I was doing in the Diamonds in the 70s, I know why I am like I am. Because we weren't just trying to be okay. We were looking for greatness. Not just looking for it. We were scratching, scraping, fighting, doing shit we shouldn't have been doing just to touch greatness, because greatness was important. And I never saw that in the other guys. The other cats, I always just saw this thing, well, yeah, we did this, and, you know, we're kind of in this, you know, we're a tribute to this. Maybe they weren't a one-band tribute, but they were a tribute to a thing. I wasn't into that. I was into finding an individual to be the thing that everyone else was trying to be. That's what I'm looking for. I don't want to be, you know, a joiner. I ain't a joiner. Joining pisses me off. You join with me because I did the goddamn work. Sons of bitches. I got some cookies here today. Every time I go back to get a guitar, I see those cookies. And I want to stop and just eat cookies. But I can't. And you might think I'm talking about the kind of cookies that they sell in Colorado nowadays. I told you about that time my old lady's girlfriend came up from West Virginia. Did I tell you my old lady's hillbilly? Probably have. Well, her girlfriend come up, that she grew up with from West Virginia. And she was staying at the house with us. And on the way to the gig, she says, hey Norm, I made some cookies. And then she gave me a smile like, these weren't just regular cookies. They were very special cookies. And she says, well, she says, but they're not real strong. She says, you wouldn't even feel a thing unless you ate 4 or 5 of them. So I took a mess up. I ate 3 of them on the way to the gig. And I felt fine until I got on stage. It was a Starlight Friday night. And as soon as I hit the first note on my guitar, I just went like, Jesus Christ, I'm eyes alone. And I was, for the next 2 hours, 2.5 hours, I was forgetting words to my songs. I don't forget words. And I was forgetting chords. I don't forget chords. But I was that night. And everybody in my band was laughing their balls off at me. Making fun of me. Hey, got a song I wrote maybe a year or 2 ago. And I wrote it after talking to a couple of my friends that are having life struggles. Sometimes when you get to be an older hunk of meat, shit starts piling up on you. And you start seeing, you start going, hey, I'm going to be struggling my whole way out. And friends of mine inspired this number. And right now what I'd like to do is stick it right in your ear. Is that cool with you? I'll give you a goddamn. How you doing? I'm gonna live till I'm not. Gonna give all that I got out of this life. I'm gonna get a lot. I'm gonna live till I'm not. Till I'm not amazed by the rain falling down, changing of the season, turning around. Till I'm not impressed that our 3 rivers flow to the Mississippi down to the Gulf of Mexico. And I'm gonna live till I'm not. Gonna give all that I got out of this life. I'm gonna get a lot of. I'm gonna live till I'm not. Till I'm not overwhelmed when I look to the sky, see 1,000 stars shimmering bright. Till I'm not inspired by the sound of a choir, a snowy winter day, the warmth of the fire. And I'm gonna live till I'm not. Gonna give all that I got out of this life. I'm gonna get a lot of. Live till I'm not able to shed a single tear. Till I'm not overcome when I add up the cost, mistakes that I've made, loved ones I've lost. Till I'm not thankful for all that I've earned. Deep in my heart, passion still burns, and I'm gonna live till I'm not. Gonna give all that I got out of this life. I'm gonna give I'm gonna live. I'm gonna live. I'm gonna live till I'm not. Till I'm not. Kind of like a soulful vibration. This guitar stand needs a little love. Kind of like a soul vibe, like soul rock, you know what I'm saying? You know, it started festering. New Jersey, Philadelphia. The Rascals was some of the early festerers of soul rock. Remember that band out of Philly? Soul Survivors. Expressway to Your Heart. How much do I love that record? Every goddamn time I hear it, I think about it. I was wrong, took too long. Remember that greaseball with the real low voice, Tom? You remember him? I got caught up in Russia. When I was a little kid, I hear that shit and I go, God damn, how manful was that shit? And I think his brother was the other singer. Did you know that they had a couple of brothers in the Soul Survivors?
Not know that.
All Guineas. There were no white guys in that band. All Italian. The Rascals, they let that one Irish guy in. What are you going to do? He's still around. My buddy hangs out with him. Gene Cornish, the guitar player, he was a Mick. But you know what? A lot of people in New Jersey that aren't Italian, they become Italian just because they're surrounded by it. Everywhere they go, they rub up against it. And by the time they're in 7th, 8th grade, you know what they're doing? They're wearing Italian gauchos and pointy shoes. Remember gauchos? They were kind of like band lawn shirts, only like they were like band lawn shirts on steroids. And they were real whopped out. And when you would go to the dance on Friday night, put on a goddamn gaucho, and you would think you was really something. And when you looked at the girls across the dance floor, you give them one of these. No, you didn't. But in your mind, you did. Or at least in my mind, I did. I didn't even look at them girls because you know why? I was afraid of them. I wish I was more of a man. I wasn't. I was just like a little half monkey, half man. I don't know. Hey, we're talking about the Diamonds today. And let me tell you something. When I just walked over there, I saw them cookies. And I just want to start eating. But you know, it's not polite to eat in front of others. I want to talk about 1978. And I had mentioned a few things. But what was 1978 like? I'll tell you one thing what it was like. I was still real good looking. God damn it, I was tight. That's about 120 pounds of Italian meat. Bad attitude. I thought I was one pretty son of a bitch. I'd come in a room like this here. Pimping. And I took some notes on what we did in 1978, some fun things. In 1978, with the Diamonds, I played 116 gigs. That's almost, would that be like a gig every 3 days almost? Close to that, right? And I think I had mentioned on right at the beginning of that year, on January 4th, we went to the Decade and saw that band Gravel. It was a Pittsburgh frontiersmen, pioneers of country meets rock. Or no, I said that wrong. Rock meets country, because these kids all started out as rock and roll kids like me, and they drifted into they matriculated into the blending together of rock and roll culture with country culture, which people are still doing today. So how cool is that? I call them effing pioneers. January 7th, I went and saw my friend Floyd Beck at a club called DJ's Lounge. I don't even remember where it was, but I remember Floyd Beck. Floyd's a black dude from Homewood. He played a Travis Bean guitar. The Travis Bean guitar was made out of metal, like aluminum or something. So it had a different sound. But that wasn't what Floyd was about. What Floyd was about was singing great. He had like a high falsetto, very extremely soulful, a little bit like Marvin Gaye. Had Marvin Gaye not been surrounded by other extreme talents, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Marvin Gaye because I'm a huge fan, and I think his historical significance is huge. But Floyd had the edge of that kind of talent, but he was here in the Berg and really didn't have a lot of other musicians, producers, writers to rub up again to take him to the level of the things that Marvin accomplished. I have a feeling, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, that had Marvin not been in the circumstance he had been in, he couldn't have accomplished as much as he did. Nothing against Marvin Gaye, but do you know what I'm saying? Being in that circumstance that Berry Gordy set up for all those guys and women to succeed. You know, a lot of people might bitch about Berry Gordy. He was this and he was that. But you know what he did? He owned the field that all them flowers were planted in. And he saw they were all watered. And that the sun shined down upon them. And then they grew, and the way they grew, and when they got upset that Berry Gordy didn't want them recording socially conscious music, they had to fight with Berry Gordy about that. But Berry Gordy grew with that in his own right. He was the leader and he was the boss, and he had growing to do as well. So I just think that whole scene was a great time in American history. Okay. On the 21st, me and my Diamonds, we played at Mike's Valley View, and that was the day I met John McGann. John McGann was the program director of the Evil Empire. I didn't call it the Evil Empire then because they hadn't done me wrong. John was like a radio, I'll use the word again, pioneer. When he left the Evil Empire, he left for greener pastures and went on to national FM radio and had put a show together called The Source, that all the national, the big FM radio stations used his leadership to gather more fans and to make sense of what music was doing rock music was doing at that time. He was a great innovator, and he was also a guy that said to me, he heard me singing like demos for Frank to sing later, and he said, "Hey, I like the sound of your voice." And that was all I needed to hear. Doll. But we'll talk about John another time. On February 14th, we played at the Hollywood Theater in California, PA, with a band called Bacchus, which ended up becoming Resistance, which was the first band I ever produced. And I had them cut T-Bird and some other stuff. And in that band was Nason Bullballs Gig and Whitey Clyde Cooper. So that was had significance. On the 19th of February that year, we went to see Elvis Costello at the Leona Theater. And it was right around the time that the record that Nick Lowe produced. The name of the album had something to do with that song, Allison. My Aim Is True.
My Aim Is True.
Which in my opinion was a classic record to this day. It's a record that anytime you listen to it, you learn something. As a writer, as an arranger. And when you learn about music being naked and not being overproduced and being played by guys that weren't great players, but they had style, and the way they played gave the music a flavor that gave the music roots. And we seem to be missing that today in the age of everybody making music with computers and pisses me off that computer operators become in charge of the music. And just because you can operate a computer doesn't mean that you should be in charge of making music. Tom, you want me to get that for you?
No, I got it.
I'm seeing Tom struggle over there. He's okay now. Don't worry about him. He's okay now. I've said that about myself. Don't worry about me. I'm okay now. And also, that same night that we went to see Elvis Costello, we played a gig at a club in that same town called the Mad Dog Saloon. And we ended up naming our little record company Mad Dog Records. But I remember that night at the Mad Dog Saloon was one of the worst bar fights I ever seen. And there was blood everywhere. I mean, there was bloodied men were beating the hell out of each other. And a little cis bag like me, I'm like, oh man, I'm scared. That ain't no bullshit. April 15th of 1978, the Diamonds, we played a Red Eye show. Salina, Ohio. I had mentioned that, and we're going to mention it again. On the 16th, we played in Detroit at a club called the Roxy, and we played with a band called The Boyfriends. The Boyfriends. And it was time of like cute little 4-piece bands playing poppy songs. But this band, The Boyfriends, was from NYC, and they had a drummer who I noticed. The kid was good, and we started talking and hanging out. His name happened to be Lee Crystal, and he ended up becoming Joan Jett's original drummer. And her next drummer was also a friend of mine, Tommy. We'll talk about that another time. But Lee Crystal played in The Boyfriends and ended up having a little fun with it. On May 11th, me and the Diamonds played the Stanley Theater, opening for Lou Effin Reed. How about Lou? New York City street poet from the Velvet Underground. At the time, he was trying to be a little bit more, a little less art rock than what he had done with the Velvets. And he was just trying to be kind of like a rock and roll guy. And I was a little disappointed that I remember that what they did that night wasn't reminiscent of what they did just a couple years earlier. What Lou did with the Rock and Roll Animal album. Do you remember that album, Tom? The live album?
Yeah.
I have to say that record was phenomenal. He had 2 Detroit guitar players, Dick Wagner, and the other one's name I can't remember. But we used to do shows in a lot of the same rooms with those guys. The other guy was from Detroit as well. They had a killer bass player. I think he was Indian, like from India, and a drummer. And man, but they didn't do that material the night that we played with them, and I was a little disappointed. I thought maybe they might have had a chance of us not kicking their ass had they done that. But the Diamonds were a breathtaking act at that particular moment, and he was going to come out there and candy ass his way through a show, not after us. On May 18th, we played a shithole out in Greensburg called Jacob's Ladder. And guess who we opened up for? Dun, 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 dun. I'm not doing it right. The Iron Butterfly. Remember the Inagata Vita, Tom? We opened for them at Jacob's Ladder, a small club, not much bigger than this room. No, maybe about this room and a half, I guess. And they were, were they from San Francisco? They were from definitely the time when a lot of music was coming from San Francisco. The Iron Butterfly. You know what I always wanted to do? I always wanted to slap the shit out of the guy that named the band the Iron Butterfly. You know, I always makes me think of one guy said to another guy. He said, this gay guy. The guy who's gay. He says, look. He looks gay as a chocolate teapot. And I thought, that could have been a great name for a band from San Francisco in the 60s. On July 11th, me and the Diamonds headed up to New York City and played a club called the Rock Bottom. And I remember playing that night. And I remember Fish. When I say Fish, I mean Warren King, who I sang the song for and we talked about. I've told you how much respect I have for who he was and what he was doing. And we played that club in New York City that night. And I remember the people in the club watching us work. And I remember in their eyes was a look of fear. because they were used to guys that, you know, played some, you know, strong pounding, like punky rhythms and some distorted guitars and all that shit. But they had never seen nothing like Warren Kingfish King. And I could remember seeing fear in their eyes. And I remember Warren knew he was great. He knew it. He walked into the room with greatness inside him. And I remember we were playing, and all these guys were just standing or sitting there, and some of them stand. A lot of people stand in New York. But the room was filled with people, and they were all just like staring at us. And I remember Warren, like just like having all these people looking at him and kind of like looking at him more than looking at the rest of the band. And I remember Warren walking up to the end of the stage and going like this. And giving everybody in the room the finger. And it was like so fantastic. It was a rock and roll moment. It was like, you know, being there when a monster was being created. You know, and seeing it, you know, being a part of it in a way, you know, because I was arranging the music and putting all that together, but watching someone become who they end up being, really cool. The 11th, I remember playing. No, that was the 11th. July 16th, we played at the Leona Theatre, opening for a band from England called UK. And I remember that night, we were so crazy. We were so effed up. We were crazy people. We knew we were unique, and we knew we were living out our dreams. And I remember, and we were kind of had like this, I've said it before, we were kind of like a combination of ZZ Top meets the Sex Pistols. We were nuts. And before this and Robbie Johns, our drummer, the beat man, was so crazy that we went out and we're opening for this prog rock band from England. So in other words, sitting in the audience was a bunch of intelligent, you know, prog rock people, which we always thought was bullshit. So the beat man, beautiful as he was, right before as soon as they introduce us, he takes a cherry bomb. And he lights it. He's sitting behind the drums. He lights a cherry bomb. They introduce us. And everybody could see this happening. He lights it and he goes like this. Before we played a goddamn note, he takes it and he throws the cherry bomb into the audience. And it lands like right at the end of the stage in like that little pit there. And it's bouncing around a little bit. And the whole place is just like staring at it. And then the goddamn thing goes off. And as soon as it went off, it was so loud, you couldn't imagine it. And then, as soon as it went off, this was an old theater. So all the dust that was settled on the rafters shook. And it came down like it was a stage prop. Like we were like it was part of the show. And you could, you know, the lights were shimmering towards the stage. And I'm standing there watching and going, what the hell was he doing? I knew we were going to get, but you could see all this dust falling down, and it didn't look like dust when it was coming down. It looked like beautiful snowflakes from the sky. And when it landed on people, it was just dirt. It was all landed in their girls' hair and on their clothes and shit. And it was fantastic. It was a rock and roll moment, which I've been a part of many. And but I do remember that night we played, and the deck was stacked against us. We should have not been on that show. But we fought, and really scored some points with them intelligent prog rock fans. I knew they couldn't really clap for us and give us what we deserved. But I could tell they were digging the shit out of it. They were just afraid to express it. When you're on stage, you can sense those things. I know that sounds crazy, but you can. The next day we drove to Memphis and played a place called the Club Kaiser. The day after that, and the next couple days after that, we drove to Houston, Texas. And then we ended up playing a club called Max's on the Border. And I remember they hated us. And I think we were supposed to play there a few days, but they fired us after one night because they didn't understand. And so we're stuck down there for a while and not knowing, we didn't have no goddamn money. So we ended up meeting these people, and they let us sleep on their shrimp boat. You know, like I can't remember where it was in Texas, but it was on the Gulf of Mexico, and we slept on their boat for a couple of days, and while they were trying to find us some other work, and I remember it wasn't a good time. And then we ended up driving back home from Texas. Rock and roll living. Yeah, I have it written here. Oh, Freeport, Texas. We slept on a shrimp boat in Freeport, Texas. August 4th and 5th of that year, we played in Bluefield, West Virginia, opening dates for Ruby Starr, who I have mentioned before. I think the second night I was on that show, I dislocated my shoulder on stage and they had to rush me to the hospital. But Ruby Starr was kind of like a rock and roll singer, stripper, and she hung out with the group we played with later that month. On the 29th, we ended up playing shows with a band called Black Oak, Arkansas. And they were like just a white trash rock and roll band. And she hung out with them. And I think the way she got in the business was they had a song called Jim Dandy to the Rescue. Yeah. And the way she got in the business, she was in the video, and she would go on stage and she'd go like this, "Go Jim Dandy, go Jim Dandy." And that was how she got in. But she was kind of cool. And she ended up starting her own career. How about this? September 5th of that year, we had a diamond session. And just Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday of this week, in 1978, September 5th, we planted the seed and cut 16-track, 2-inch Ampex machine through a board, the same kind of board that Jimi Hendrix had at Electric Lady. Data Mix, I think it was called a Data Mix board. But we cut that day. Dangerous Stranger, Vengeance, Satisfied, Shakedown, High Rollers, Shake, and Gorilla. And how great is it that 42 years and 2 months or whatever, we're back working on that same stuff. We're now finishing the music that we cut then. And when I brag about what we were doing then, I brag about it, and I will present the evidence that my braggadocious ways are warranted. It's not some candy ass bullshit music. It's deep. It'll rock your bones. And we'll see that coming up early next year. On September 9th, we played another Red Eye show. Salina, Ohio. Outdoors, probably about 700 to 1,000. Hied up, drunk, reefered out. Flatlanders, my people. September 16th, there was a movie filmed in Pittsburgh called The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. Tom's shaking his head. Do you remember that rotten? Did you ever see it?
I remember when I still lived here when they were filming that.
Okay.
I still lived here in 78. So, yeah.
Well.
Wasn't John Cleese from Monty Python in that movie?
I don't remember him being in it. But I remember. You remember The Godfather? The guy that Pacino said the old man had too much wine? You know, the Italian that played that character?
Yeah.
He was in it.
Right.
And who else was in it and stood beside us in our scene was Meadowlark Lemon.
Yeah.
The Harlem Globetrotter. And our scene was, we got called, they wanted us to be a rock and roll band, like a punk rock band that was auditioning for the team. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh was the Aquarius, the Pittsburgh Aquarius. It's a fish, yeah. It was like a basketball team that stunk, and I think their name was the Aquarius. That's why, in terms of the fish, and the team was so bad that they just had an open audition in this big gymnasium, and it was filled with different, unique people that you wouldn't think would audition for a basketball team. There were nuns, cops, firemen, the punk rock band, all these just different weirdos. And we stood right beside Meadowlark Lemon. That's where they placed us. But I think we did it 2 days in a row. On the 26th of September, and anyway, The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh came out, and ain't nobody liked it. But it was what I would call like, you know how some movies aren't great, but you like them? Caddyshack is a perfect example of it. I mean, who could say that that's a great movie? But who could say that it isn't? You know what I mean? It's like, it actually is great. Do you remember, like, they had these horror movies called Basket Case? Did you ever see them, Tom?
Yeah.
I mean, like those movies. Fish That Saved Pittsburgh was kind of like that.
Yeah.
It was, there was another great basketball movie with that a-hole from Saturday Night Live. What the hell's his name? His last name was Moon in the movie. Do you know who I mean? And it was probably about 10 years ago, and it was about a basketball team. I forget what that guy's name is, and I should know it. He's he's the guy that said more cowbell. You know who I mean? But anyway, if you get a chance to see The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, I would recommend seeing it simply because it's not a great movie, but something about it is charming. The 26th of September that year, the Phase 3, which was a punk rock club right across the tracks here, we opened a show for the Dead Boys, which was, the Dead Boys were a band that lived in New York City, but they were all from Ohio, the state God forgot. We opened a show for them at the Phase 3 that night. Oh, and on the 29th of September that year, we played a show at Robert Morris. And that's the show where Pat and Frosty got in trouble. Pat and Frosty were our roadies. And they were both guys from Maine. And they were very unique characters. October 20 and 21, we played a club in Washington, D.C. called The Atlantis, which I have no memory of. November 10th and 11th, we played a club in Philly called the Artemis, which I have no memory of. November 18th, we played a Red Eye show in Salina, Ohio, and that's the night we cut the goddamn live album that I'm talking about. That just now we're going to master and package, and it'll be out early next year, live Red Eye. And it is simply, can I use the word?
Delicious.
It's really an urgent piece of music. On the 19th, we played Toledo, Ohio. I don't remember where. December 1st, we played at the Phase across the tracks with a New York City band called The Fast. And The Fast was kind of like a punky band from New York City. And the stars of the band were two brothers. And they were kind of cool because one of the brothers was like this real handsome guy. And he was like the lead singer. And the other brother was kind of like a goofball. And he played guitar. And the difference, kind of like Cheap Trick ran down that vibration with the nerd goofball and then the good looking guys. And I think a few acts have done that. But The Fast was doing it on the punk rock club level. They were cool. On December 2nd, we played a gig in Lebanon, Kentucky. And I remember that gig. I remember that everybody there had the craziest speaking accent. And that everybody there had a little pint or half pint of whiskey. And also had a newspaper. And inside, like newspaper wrapped up. And inside it was purple homegrown reefer. They all had homegrown reefer and whiskey in like little bottles or moonshine in little bottles. I remember they were all shot. December 8th and 9th, we played at a really cool club in Detroit that I do remember called Bookies. And I think we might have played with the Romantics. Remember the Romantics, Tom?
Wally, yeah, I knew those guys.
Okay. Yeah, Wally was the Frank
Wally
guy.
has a guitar store in Rochester, New York now.
Was he okay?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, when we played with him, the star of the band was the drummer. He's the guy that wrote the hit and sang the hit. But I think he quit the band kind of early on. He was Italian.
They were all about your size.
Yeah, they were all little munchkins. But I remember kicking their asses every time we played with them. I remember opening for them at the Decade and going on before them, and they were like, didn't want us to set up, and it was one of them nights where there was all this bullshit. And we finally went on before them, and I was so pissed off at the way they treated us that we just stormtrooped the club. And about 15 minutes into their set, everybody just got up and walked off. Because they knew that when me and the Tigers left the stage, the show was over. There were some guys from Detroit there, and they were strumming along and being pretty, red pants and red leather pants. Get the hell out of here. But you know what they had done that night? They took a beating from some nobodies from Pittsburgh. The 15th of that December, we played a club called JB's in Kent, Ohio. And JB's was a cool room. And it's where there was a legendary local band there that never really achieved national success. And they were called the Numbers Band. And they were the older brothers and cousins, I believe, of the Devo guys that actually ended up accomplishing quite a bit. So this room was kind of like a respected joint, Kent, Ohio. And Kent was kind of a cool town. It really was. Oh my God. On the 30th of December that year, we played at a club in Philadelphia, an extremely cool club called the Hot Club. And we opened for a band from England, a very pompous, self-loving act called XTC. You remember them, Tom? And they just thought they were like super intelligent, and they ran into a goddamn buzzsaw because the Diamonds opened the show for them that night. And when XTC came, they brought Melody Maker magazine with them to document their tour of America, because they were sure that this band was going to come from England and come over here and with their intellectual music, you know, change our religions. The first gig they played, they came into this club and it was like freezing, probably about 5 degrees out. And they came in, and I was in the Diamonds. We all wore these big overcoats because we couldn't afford hotel rooms a lot of times, so we just sleep on the floor of the club or something. So we were all sleeping on the floor of the club, on the stage floor, when all these pompous English guys came in. And I remember them just looking down on us. And I remember that, a couple months later, somebody from England sent me a copy of the article where the Melody Maker magazine made fun of who we are, and they were kind of called us like low-lives, animals and stuff. But I remember we beat the hell out of them English cats that night on stage, because we just come on firing. Manful. And then as soon as we were done playing that night, we jumped in the truck and drove home and played New Year's Eve at Phase 3 and opened for Stiv Bators and the Undercity Kids. And Stiv Bators was the lead singer for the Dead Boys. He was from Youngstown, but ended up having a career in New York City and was quite a cat. He died in Paris, got hit by a car while he was walking and hit his head, and then didn't realize that he wasn't well, and something happened on his brain, and the poor guy died young. He was a friend of mine. He was a very good cat. He would have it'd been nice to watch him get old. And in fact, watching someone get old is what we're doing right now. You guys are watching someone get old right here. Norman, Roosevelt, Aloysius, Nicodemus, Amadeus, Valentino, Giovanni, Romeo, Bruno, Raphael, Lucien, Alaluigi. Nardini. You're watching him get old on Tom's camera. And you know, when I'm working, doing these shows, the one thing I always worry about is I slobber a lot. And I talk shit a lot. And so a lot of times spit flies out of my mouth. And I always worry that I'm going to get it on Tom's camera thing. You know why? Because I got respect. I might not seem like I got respect, but I got respect.
Play a song.
We just had a request.
Any song will do.
Tom has requested a song. And what I'm going to do right now, I don't have a strap on this guitar, so I'm going to have to sit down. But this is a song from an album I mentioned earlier. The name of the album was There Was a Time. And I think this might have been the opening song from that album. But if it wasn't, it's a song that we used to use as an opening song often. And my friend, Jimmy Sinclair, if he's watching, honk, I'll send it out to him. It's a song called That's Enough About Me. What about you? Since the day you left me, I've been lonely, in a bad way, all tangled up and blue. Every day, baby, I've been hurting, had to love about me. What about you? That's enough about me. I ain't got much to say. That's enough about me. Nobody listen anyway. What about you? Do you feel all better now? Did you find yourself with somebody else? Are you throwing in the town? Since the day you left me, I've been lonely, in a bad way, all tangled up and blue. Every day, baby, I've been hurting, had enough about me. What about you? That's enough about me. I ain't been doing much. That's enough about me. I guess I've been staying out of touch. What about you? Now you're on your own again. Have you been staying in, or are you going out? Or did you find yourself a brand new friend? Since the day you left me, I've been lonely, in a bad way, all tangled up and blue. Every day, baby, I've been hurting, that's enough about me. What about you? I can tell the way you're looking at me. The situation is plain to see, 'cause I ain't got nothing looking, and I don't even feel like looking. Since the day you left me, I've been lonely, in a bad way, all tangled up and blue. Every day, baby, I've been hurting, that's enough about me. What about you? That's enough about me. What about you? I forgot to play the solo. That's enough about me. We used to use that to open a show, playing three-piece, me, Whitey, and Harry. And we do that every day, and do that in three-part harmony. And you know what it would do? It would snap a couple of girdles every goddamn time. And it would get the room going. I like to get some young hunk of meat, one of them pretty people they put out of Nashville. Get all them pretty people down there. Get one of them pretty young folks to sing us something like that, instead of a lot of that candy ass shit they're putting out. 'Cause I'll come over there! That's enough about me. What about you? How you doing? Let me play that song I've been working on. Next week. You know what next week is? I'm going to give a thanks. That's what my grandpa Bernie would say. I'm going to give a thanks. And every Thanksgiving, we would all get together. It's a big deal to my mother. She'd clean the goddamn house. She'd be, the day before, she'd be cooking and preparing. And she would put on a dress and makeup and for Thanksgiving dinner. It was a big deal in our house. And a lot of family would always come, and I didn't realize how fantastic it was when I was a kid. I just thought it was my mom putting on a show. And I was right. But I didn't realize how important the show was. But now I do. And I'm going to try and play it for you. I started writing it a few years ago. And I never finished it until maybe 2 weeks ago. Maybe 16 days. But it's a song called Thanksgiving. I played it last show, and I read the words because I hadn't remembered them yet. And I'm going to try and do them now without the aid of a net. But when I'm not going to look down and see if I scare myself and see if I remember all the words. But it's a song called Thanksgiving, and I like to send it out to everybody watching. And I hope y'all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I hope you have friends and family that love you and that think good things about you. And I know when you get old like me, you've lost a lot of folks. And losing folks, man, it always leaves a scar. And the older you get, the more scars you got. Come the time for planting, come the time to tend, come the time to harvest at the season's end, come the time to quarrel, comes the time to defend, come the time to a time to make amends. Comes a time to be humble, a time to bow down. Comes a time to be grateful for the blessings abound. Comes a time for giving, comes a time for Thanksgiving. Comes a time for teardrops, comes a time to laugh, comes a time to be still, comes a time to dance, comes a time for shouting, comes a time to pray, comes a time for working, comes a time to play. Comes a time to be humble, a time to bow down. Comes a time to be grateful for the blessings abound. Comes a time for giving. Comes a time for Thanksgiving. When the turkey comes out of the oven, open a bottle of wine. And Grandpa tell the same stories he told last year at this time. Comes a time to remember. Comes a time to embrace all of those memories that cannot be erased. Comes a time to be humble, a time to bow down. Comes a time to be grateful for the blessings abound. Comes a time for good living. Comes a time for Thanksgiving. Comes a time for living. Comes a time for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. I'm thankful I didn't screw that up more than I did. Forgot a couple words. Mumbled over a couple other ones. Slobbered on the goddamn camera. Hey, what are you going to do? I'm giving you all I got. Thanksgiving. What do you do? Oh, you know, on TV they're saying you shouldn't get together. Tough time. Wasn't like when we were kids, you know. It was you get together. People come in from other states. Uncle Larry would come in, and when Uncle Larry come in, everybody got excited because Uncle Larry, you know what he did? He knew how to make you laugh, and you know, even more importantly than that, he knew how to make my mother laugh. My mother wasn't a laugher. My mother was serious. Like I said before, the only person I was ever afraid of was my mother. Because she was stern. She had a lot of love. No question. She had great concern and she loved you so much that she couldn't even share the fun of a lot of things because she was always worried about how you would take, especially me, how I would take it. Would I get too crazy? She was always trying to tamp me down and keep me from being my own worst enemy. Because she knew. She watched the other children in the family and her sisters and the other kids. And then she watched me. She went, he's got a wild seed. This one got the wild seed. And I think she thought, boy, I'm glad I got him close to me because I can at least try and keep him, fit for consumption. I miss her. I crazy miss her. One thing I wanted to talk about today is a Pittsburgh club that I haven't played in years. There's a club called Excuses on the south side. You know, the south side, for those folks from Pittsburgh, they know that the south side is a gathering spot, a partying spot, and kind of like an exciting little neighborhood, a unique neighborhood. Being on the south side, and nowadays being in Lawrenceville, those two Pittsburgh neighborhoods, is the closest thing you can get to being like in New York City. When we was kids, like when you was in Shadyside, which in the 60s, it was a vibrant young people's community. And when you were hanging in Shadyside, that was the closest you could get to being in the Village in New York City. And things changed in Shadyside, so it grew away from that. But the South Side assumed it, and now Lawrenceville before this pandemic, those communities were vibrant and alive, and there was all kind of people commiserating, rubbing up against one another, getting a lot out of life. But Excuses was a club. I think I started playing there in 1989, or I'm not sure when they opened. 88 or 89. What happened is I was driving through the south side. I was by myself. And I saw this club. I was driving towards home. And I saw this club on the right-hand side. And the name of it was Excuses. And in the window was a little thing. I was stopped at a red light, I believe. Or if not, I just saw the sign and it said, "Band tonight." And seeing that, I says, okay, they got a band in here? Well, let me just stop and see what the hell's going on. And I stopped and went in. And there was just a nice little gathering. And I knew some of the cats in the band. One of the guys I knew was Donnie Hollywood. Really cool guitar player. And that was my first time in there. And what happened at Excuses was they developed this thing, and it was the Thursday night jam. And it lasted for like 20 years. Every Thursday night, the guys in the Thursday night band would change a little bit. Some guys would be there for a few years, and then they'd move on, and other guys would come in. One guy that was in it for almost the whole time, maybe the whole time, was this guy named Hank Lafredo, was the bass player. Extremely cool guy. And every time I would see him, I would say, "Give Hank a yank." But Donnie Hollywood was in it. Mark Haleski, who used to be called the Polish Falcon. Real cool guitar player that spent a lot of time playing with Whitey and Whitey Cooper and the Blind Venetians. Jack Rosowski was a drummer that played there. Jack Sanso was a harmonica player. But a lot of cats had it, and they ran for 20 years. I used to play Excuses. When I was working it, I don't know how many years I did there. But maybe 15. And I would do the last Saturday of every month. Most of the time. But at one point I got this crazy idea. Because I ain't right. And I wanted to prove. I always want to prove something. I'm 70 years old and I still have things that I want to prove. I wish I could say I was a better person than that. But I'm not. But at one time what I wanted to do was I wanted to show people that I was the man. And I thought, here's what I'll do. I talked to George, very cool guy that runs Excuses, Greek. And I said to him, I want to do this thing, and I want to play every Friday night. And I want to play my regular 4 hours. But what else I want to do is I want to play 4 hours before I play 4 hours. Acoustic. And so we brought in my friend Lamont Samuels, who played mandolin, guitar, dobro, accordion, and sings great. And what we started, and I was writing different kind of music at the time. I started writing more, I guess they use the word Americana, country, I don't know. I was just writing what was coming out of me. And so we played 4 hours kind of acoustically, and then Lamont would be done. And then me, Whitey, and Harry would play another 4 hours, just a 3-piece electric band that we had been doing for years. And I did it, what did I say before? Because I wanted to prove something. So we did that for a couple years. And but playing 8 hours. Think about that. You candy-ass musicians that might be watching. Struggle to do, at the end of a 4-hour gig, you're like, oh my God, do we have to play another set? Sons of bitch. 8 hours. And licking it up. Not sad to do it, fighting for the chance to do it. Because you know why? Because we're men. And when I say I wanted to prove something, men have something to prove sometimes. That's just how men are. You think great boxers don't have something to prove? You know why they became great boxers? Because they had something to prove. It wasn't good enough for them to just fight or just train. What they had to show was that they were tougher, that they were badder, that they were somebody. And sometimes in people need to show that they're somebody. And that's okay. It doesn't, and that shouldn't be discouraged. It should be encouraged. But 8 hours at excuses. Elisa, like in the later years, not that much later, ended up becoming the manager and a very great chick. And before Elisa was there was this crazy South Side chick. And the South Side, you know, I'm talking about how it was kind of like New York City and it was very hip. But it was also really Pittsburgh. And really kind of Pittsburgh tough. And there was a chick that worked at Excuses. Her name was Sandy. And she was a tough guy. And she didn't take no shit. And she would like to MF people and fight people, slap guys, kick ass. And she always was mean to me. And the reason she was mean to me is because she liked me. And she hated herself for liking me. You ever get an experience like that? You know, because I was a smart shit little monkey of a boy. And she was kind of like a bigger girl and tough. You know, I'm telling you, I've seen her smack a few guys, smack them down. And she hated herself because she liked me. And I sensed it. And I would always break her balls. And so Whitey, that asshole that played drums for me, he made this thing out of roadie tape and like a 2-liter bottle Coca-Cola plastic thing. And he wrapped it with roadie tape. And he called it a monkey beater. And Sandy used to call me a little weasel. She says, look at that little weasel up there. But meanwhile, I knew she dug me. So anyway, Whitey ended up giving her this monkey beater and says, when he gets out of line, he said, don't be afraid to hit him. So she started coming up the stage with this monkey beater. And she called, I got the monkey beater. And she started hitting me with this goddamn thing. And I tried to act like it didn't hurt. Because I always wanted to pretend like I was a guy. And I was a guy, but not much of one. And it was just a great thing. And when I think of all those years we had at Excuses. And then after I was gone at Excuses, a few years, then my friend McKeag, who's my friend from being since I was a teenage boy, he ended up going in and starting an afternoon thing at Excuses. I think they had been playing kind of like a blues jam, but a little bit more of a band, a pretty good band. And then letting people sit in, kind of a situation. And they had been down the street, and I think the club that they were at closed, so they moved up to Excuses. And I think they've been there 10 years on Saturday afternoons before this shit happened. Everybody got shut down. But that club has a good history of real music and supplying work for Pittsburgh musicians. And I don't think I'd ever talked about that before on the show, so I just wanted to get that said. How about this guitar?
10 minutes.
Tom says 10 minutes. Maybe I should see what else I got to do. You know, every 2 weeks, we get together. Ain't no big deal. But it is to me. Because I think about you. I think about how much fun it is to have a purpose. When I don't have a purpose in life, I'm bummed. I need to work all the time. So let me tell you something. When you don't see me, I'm working on something. I'm working to become the worst keyboard player in the city. I'm well on my way to doing that. I'm working on writing songs, which I've been doing since the 70s, and I've started to get pretty good at it the past 20 years or so. Working on my guitar playing, working on my slide playing, E-tuning, G-tuning. Always working. Now, lately I've been working in the studio cutting, and right now I'm going to do something that I have to do because I live in this great city that we call Pittsfield, Pennsylvania. I've told you before, my father, Arthur Lincoln Andrew Desio Diamundo Nardini, raised me on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Raised me up. Taught me about Bobby Lane smoking cigarettes on the sidelines, drinking whiskey out of a little cup. Taught me, I don't know if you guys know this, but the first 300-pound man in the NFL played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Big Daddy Lipscomb. Right next to him was John Baker, 290-pound defensive end, defensive tackle. They didn't have three-man defensive lines then. Four men. Always four men across front, three linebackers. Middle linebacker. The middle linebacker, when I was a kid, was a position of significance. Now they have inside linebackers, two of them, and outside linebackers, and three defensive linemen. So things have changed. But when I was a kid, they had Sam Huff, middle linebacker. And the greatest linebacker of all, middle linebacker, lived here. Played here. J.L. You know who I'm talking about. Jack Lambert. One of us. Tough. Lambert, when his career was over, ain't nobody seen him since. You know why? Because he don't like people. Can't stand people. He didn't like people then, and he don't like people now. He's just a tough son of a bitch. And we all respect it. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the Steelers, I believe, are 9-0. That means something to us. For some reason, our identity as Pittsburghers, we tie that into our sports teams more than we should, because it's all bullshit. But culturally, for me, I was raised to do this. It wasn't my choice. It was just my father just raised me to represent for our sports teams. The Pirates, the Steelers. And then the Penguins came and found greatness, and you got to support that. And good people. I'll tell you a story sometime about seeing the Penguins backstage at a Bon Jovi concert and how out of place they looked, because you could see Sid was there too, and they looked so out of place because you know why? They seemed like such nice people, and nobody else there seemed anywhere near as nice a person as those guys seemed. I don't know why I'm saying what I'm saying or what it means, but that's what I saw and that's what I felt. And watching those guys hang when they, came back in the dressing room, we're talking to Johnny and all that shit, and they just seemed so much nicer than you would expect. Such successful and have money, have adulation, and how that can corrupt so easily. The Penguins didn't seem that it had corrupted. They just seemed like nice people, and I was like, I remember it now, and that's why I'm saying it. Folks from all around worship the hallowed ground beneath the warriors, black and gold, across continents, legions behold. We're rich, we're poor, we're working class, we're the Steeler Nation, and we're gonna kick your ass. We're in every city in the USA, deep in the heart of Texas by the Frisco Bay. All over Florida and up in the Northeast. But on Sunday afternoons, we all want to be in Pittsburgh, PA. 'Cause we're your Steeler Nation. Get in your face without hesitation. We're gonna give you guys an education. We're your Pittsburgh Steeler Nation. We're in Cincinnati, we're in Baltimore. The mistake on the lake, out where the Cardinals score. All over Carolina and in that city of soul. And man, we won ourselves 6 Super Bowls in Pittsburgh, PA. 'Cause we're your Steeler Nation. Get in your face without hesitation. We're gonna give you guys an education. We're your Pittsburgh Steeler Nation. Well, the Chief sure done us right with this football team. And if he was here with us now, he would be so proud of his Steeler family. Man, we're in the city where the Eagles fly, where the Falcons soar, where they have Packer pride. We're in that cattle town where they make Rocky Mountain beer. But here we go, Steelers is all we want to hear. In Pittsburgh, PA, we're your Steeler Nation. Get in your face without hesitation. We're gonna give you guys an education. We're the Pittsburgh Steeler Nation. And the Super Bowl is our destination. Yoy and double yoy! How you doing? Go Steelers. Steeler Nation, baby. How about Norman Nardini alone, 17? Did you think I'd be here 17 shows later? You know, when the pandemic started, I seen all these folks doing live streams, but I didn't see anyone doing quite like what Tom and I are doing. You know, what we're doing? We're dropping our balls on the floor, saying what needs said, playing what needs played, touching people in a most manful way. Tom, do we have any time left?
We have very little time left.
Hey guys, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. Get some bird, cranberry sauce. You know what I like about cranberry sauce? When you open the goddamn can and you take it and slap it down, it comes out, it looks like dog food looks when you open the can. You know what I mean? Do you ever start to think about shit like that? Probably not. Well, I do. And I love some cranberry sauce. I think it's good for you, too. I think it's good for your urinary tract. Cranberry juice, right, Tom?
That's said to be.
So I think Tom says it's said to be. So you're peeing in a real healthy way. Filling a cup. Hey, Tom says good night. Tom says...
Good night.
Tom says, Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You know what Norman says? I want to wrap my loving arms around you, give you a smack right on your shit can, send you back to your mama. I'll see your ass later. And then you drop the mic, right? If I had a mic, I'd drop it.